All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to January 8th, 2025 office hours. Um, Today is going to be a little bit different. We are offering 2 hours for receiving your comments and feedback regarding the 2024 application and the 2025 NOFA. Unrelated questions, please forward those to the CDBG inbox if you need those answered urgently. Otherwise, we'll resume our normal office hours at the next time. If you would like to submit a comment, please click the Q&A chat bubble. You can submit anonymously, but if you want your name or organization to be included with the comment, please type it in the Your Name box. And as usual, all comments will be saved and recorded as part of the public record. As I said, this is going to be a listening session, not our normal office hours. We're requesting feedback on the 2024 application and input on the 2025 NOFA. And this session is scheduled for an additional hour, so it will end, if needed, at 12. All right, so I'll give everyone the time to submit their feedback. And happy 2025, everyone. Thank you for the New Year's wishes. Happy New Year. Okay, and so we have a couple of comments in the Q&A. We also have someone with their hands up. So for this session, we are allowing you to go on to be unmuted and to speak your comment if you'd like. Let me see. We'll start with Lesha Schaefer.
I did not mean to raise my hand. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
Hi, Jade. I see your comment regarding that there were some sections where a no response would still make you upload an attachment. If you can be so kind as to send us send the unit inbox what questions they were or any other information about that, I would love to look into that and fix that for the next application. Thank you so much for your comment and feedback.
Thank you, Jeannie. I wanted to address, first of all, Paul, thank you for your question. Since this is a listening session, if you wouldn't mind sending that to the unit inbox, we can try and get you an answer for you there in the interest of not getting off topic here. As far as anonymous attendee whose comment was, can anyone assist in the application process? It's your first time. Thank you for that and welcome to CDBG. If you wouldn't mind, we will drop in the chat the link to our unit inbox in case you don't have it. If you could send your request for assisting in the application process, we can assign a program representative to give you technical assistance on getting going, since this is your first time. We do help folks get going. So please send a request to the inbox asking for technical assistance for application, and we'll get you covered. And thank you, Jeannie, for putting that in the chat.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Brandy Caparasso, I have some long suggestions. I may have to make several references. That's totally okay. And just if you could, please let us know what jurisdiction you're working uh, along with your comments. Brandy, I know you're working with several in Siskiyou County. So first of all, if a jurisdiction self-funds planning for a public infrastructure or public facility project, including but not limited to NEPA and full design plans and specifications, having a project shovel-ready, and applies for and is awarded a Public Works Public Facilities grant, can those planning expenditures be considered pre-award costs and included in the budget to be reimbursed after its standard agreement execution? In my reading of 2022 CDBG final guidelines and 24 CFR 570, there is not a set time limit to have those as pre-award costs. Will these be allowed as pre-award costs in 2025? And is there a reasonable time frame for those costs to be allowable? Say 6 years from initial cost to application date?
Thank you, Brandy, for your comment. We are working on having a stronger and more detailed guidelines on pre-award costs and planning costs for the 2025 NOFA. As of right now, unfortunately, I don't have any answers for you, but this will be cleared up by the 25 NOFA. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. I'm gonna read Brandy's next question, and then Lori, I'll let you speak. With the 2024 NOFA, there were major changes made after the NOFA was released, specifically finding out that planning grants related to another activity had pre-qualifications and that there were restrictions on time to implement the project and continued reporting. While I appreciate the feasibility study workaround, it was given at the 11th hour, which put a strain on all jurisdictions. We hope there is not a major change to the NOFA in 2025 once it's issued. Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Brandy. We very much appreciate that. And, unfortunately, it wasn't avoidable. We were finding, building the plane as we flew it on this one, trying to come up with a creative way to allow for some of this pre-qualification stuff. So, and be able to do the feasibility study workaround, all of the things you stated. So we are also hoping for not having major changes to the NOFA in 2025, and we really appreciate this feedback. We will move that up the chain, and so appreciate everyone's flexibility with it, and apologies for that coming as late as it did in the process, but we were hoping to, help folks out with that process. So really appreciate this feedback, and we will record that and consider when we're working on 2025. Thank you, Brandy.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, I'm going to Lori, I'll let you talk now. Please go ahead.
Thank
Good
you,
morning.
Tanner. I was hoping that you all could share with us a little bit about what worked and what didn't work for you on your side. And do you anticipate, and what you are anticipating for 2025 changes to streamline your process? And I know you're looking at what we have and impacts that we might be suggesting, but I know we don't always understand how the process works on your end of it. So can you share or enlighten us on things that you've noticed that we might need to be aware of as we move forward and through this process so we have a better understanding?
Sure, I can jump in on here. Thank you, Lori, for that very comprehensive question. It's a long one for answering. The short answer, though, is we're still looking at applications, and as we generally do, and we're really fine tuning the process for with the goal of making things easier for applicants and also, for our staffing to make things easier so that it's quicker to get these into standard agreements and, get information to you. So as far as what we've noticed, we're still in the very beginning preliminary stages of application review. So I can't say that we've seen patterns yet, but what we look for are patterns of, folks doing the same. If everybody's doing the same missteps, then we take that as a we're not being clear. So other than providing more clarity, I don't really have a good answer for you on what we have noticed this time around, or we don't anticipate a lot of changes for 2025. In fact, we designed 2024 NOFA to be forward moving as far as what we're allowing and those sorts of things. So we are not anticipating any major changes to the 2025. That said, we have a new federal administration coming in. There's a lot of moving parts and factors, so I can't confirm that there won't be any changes, but I can say that as we notice, we will have office hours, slides and things. Oh, I'm sorry. I take that back. We are anticipating changes due to the new administration and possible changes to CDBG. So, but we will keep informed in these office hours as we learn. We will share with everyone so that we can all be ready to go at the right time. It's part of why we want to do this listening session to see what your feedback, what your experience was with your application, so we can try to address some of that, streamline it for next time. But we don't really have much that we can share at the moment as all the parts are moving. So, not anticipating huge changes, but can't really anticipate with what's going on federally right now. So sorry, I know that's not the answer probably that you were looking for. If you have something specific that you want to ask about our experience with, then happy to do our best to answer that. But yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts right now. So we're all kind of just taking it as it comes and watching for what we may need to do. And we will definitely keep you all informed as things progress.
And Susan, I just want to piggyback off of what you're saying and just kind of reiterate that we are trying our best to not have any more major changes going forward. This whole main sub application idea is in preparation for when we go into HCD Connect. And we are trying to make the least amount of changes as possible in terms of how things are structured and just minimal changes year over year is what I'm trying to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. And to piggyback off of you too, I guess if we were to say that something that we did see getting, that we've seen so far coming in, kind of off from what we were looking for, I would say single audits, that we got single audits of the wrong years, a lot of things, not giving corrective action plans if there are, single audit findings that need to be addressed, that sort of thing. So we really want to work to get on track with everybody and so maybe that clarity needs to be more reiterated closer to the 25 NOFA. But I would say for now, what we've seen so far, single audits have been a little bit of an issue in what we're looking for. So please, when you do apply, regardless of what NOFA year, the single audits are a big issue, and those need to be accurate. So we'll make sure we provide some future office hours conversation about what we're actually looking for so we can try to tighten that up. So I would say, based on your question about what we've been seeing, single audits, I kind of stand out to me on that front. So hopefully that's helpful.
And one more thing that kind of sticks out for me is questions asking questions during the review period. We definitely get, there's definitely this element of actually being in the application and seeing the application to actually having issues and questions. But what I do tend to notice is that there are a lot of questions that do come in once the application is open and we're no longer able to provide any assistance to that aren't literally technical difficulties like computer issues, login issues, things like that. We do see a lot of questions come in once the application is open about the application questions and what is acceptable documentation, what are we looking for. Those would be best asked during the review period. And so with having given that extra 30 days this time around, we were hoping to see a lot more questions come through about maybe asking clarification on what does this question mean or things like that. But there were very, very few questions coming in during the review period.
Thank you, Jeannie. I would agree with that too. And to piggyback off of that, the whole reason that we can't answer questions once the application is open is to not give a competitive advantage to anyone, especially in such a competitive program with limited funds. So please believe we are chomping at the bit wanting to answer and get back to you on those things, but we're very strictly held that we cannot give an advantage. So I would piggyback off of Jeannie to say I very much encourage during that open NOFA review period that's when you ask your project specific questions right then, so that we can get those answers out to you before the application submission period opens. That would be really helpful for everyone going forward on both sides. So thanks for bringing that up, Jeannie. Very good point.
I would like to post to the audience here.
I was muted, sorry.
I would like to post to the audience here and ask, was the FAQs helpful? Or were some of the documents that were released with the NOFAs helpful, not helpful, or confusing? That would greatly help us shape our next NOFA and TA. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Laura, I'm going to remove the permission to talk. So if you have another question, please feel free to put your hand up. I am going to now let Paul talk. Paul has a question.
Hey, Tanner, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good morning. I have a couple comments here, so I'll just run down the list. It's easier than typing. Okay, first one. So if we're going to stick with the main app and the sub app, I would ask that HCD consider making all of the applications due at the same time. It gets really difficult when you're doing an OTC project and public service apps when you have them 60 days apart. You're trying to generate a resolution, but one project's way ahead of the other one. You ask for the budget and the duplication of benefits Excel sheet with the main application, but sometimes, again, that's 60 days in advance, and we're still trying to work with nonprofits to even get their budgets at that time. So it makes it really difficult to do them at separate times. So that's the first comment on that one. Second, so kind of on that same note on the main app versus the sub app. So in my mind, I had a number of jurisdictions that were doing OTCs as well as public services. And then also in our office, we had some that were just doing public services. It seemed to me that if you were only doing a public service app, you had a pretty significant advantage in the point scoring because you had 60 more days to to conduct public hearings that you were actually giving points for, whereas somebody that did a OTC had already submitted their main application with the public participation information. And so they were kind of locked in. So again, it kind of goes back to that, maybe just having one deadline so that we're all on the same level playing field would be helpful. So that's comment number 2. Third comment kind of has to deal with, well, Brandy sent a number of really good things in here. One of the comments was regards to the gap funding and if not but for, but you're also giving points for leverage. And you asked for a lot of explanations on that. So that gets a little tricky because nonprofits give you budgets, and technically some of them maybe could run the program with the budgets that they have and the leverage they have, but we're also asking for CDBG money to make it whole or to expand it or to go to the capacity they want it to. So it gets a little difficult trying to explain how this activity would not work if not but for CDBG funding. So just a comment on that question that you guys asked. And then last comment, actually I'd already written this down before Susan and Jeannie kind of got into their comments. My comment was going to be to allow for questions longer. I understand that nobody wants to give anybody a competitive advantage. But I would assume that HCD has their own policy on whether or not you can answer questions up to a certain date. It's really easy to hope that we give you questions in the review period, but until we get into that application and actually go through it and see what some of these jurisdictions, subrecipients give us, we just don't know what those questions are going to be. So it really ties our hand. And I would be just kind of surprised that you wouldn't want to get more clarity out to folks as they're going through it. So that's my last comment, and thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you, Paul. Actually, I'll touch on a couple of those. I really appreciate your feedback. Your first question with the public participation feedback, appreciate that. We will consider. Your second question with all of the apps having the same deadline, absolutely considering that as well. We're always looking for a more equitable distribution way. So we will definitely take that into consideration for the 2025. Actually, as a heads up, we already kind of are taking that into consideration and trying to make things more equitable. The but-for funding, I'm actually going to hand it over to Jeannie. She can explain what that means a little bit more. And then the question 4.2, thank you for that feedback as well. That is noted for future. So Jeannie, I'll let you handle an explanation of the but-for gap funding.
Can do. Just wanted to. Was that the last thing or?
Yeah.
Okay. For some clarity regarding the gap and but-for funding, I'm not sure if maybe this is just not being explained well enough in the no fund application, but CDBG is intended to be gap funding. It's not supposed to be the sole source funding for an entire project or program. So the reason why we are awarding a lot of points for jurisdictions who do demonstrate that we aren't the only source of funding for a project or program, or in this case, this year, I guess, for a program. It's really showing that CDBG is being utilized as gap funding and not the sole source to fund an entire project, because it's not guaranteed. CDBG is not guaranteed year over year, and these are extremely important programs that have a lot of impact in the community, and we want to do as much as we can, but we understand that having other sources of funding will definitely make it go further. Anything else you want to add to that, Susan?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jeannie. That's a good synopsis. It is intended as but-for funding. It's not required, which is why we don't have a match. But we really want folks to think about being able to complete this project, we want to avoid any type of a payback situation. And we can't always do, funding extensions if costs go up or, some hiccup comes into the situation that you're dealing with, especially with construction projects. So it's really, we ask all these clarifying questions try in an attempt to make sure folks are thinking about being able to complete it regardless of what contingencies may have to be handled. So we always do recommend that you add contingencies to your funding request. So, overestimations are better than underestimations always, but we really want folks to be thinking about how they're going to get this project completed, because worst case scenario would be we wouldn't be able to extend more funding and then the project couldn't be completed. We don't meet a national objective. We're really trying to avoid that situation. So having another funding source is helpful for us to know that if something comes up, then you still have other options that we can do that you have in play for in case something goes wrong. So that is supposed to be a helpful thing. And maybe, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we try to be transparent before. I know, Paul, you have a difficult time once the application is open to be able to know exactly what questions to ask, but we try to be transparent to kind of release what the questions are in the application to kind of help prepare, be able to take advantage of the 60-day period before the application opens. So if that's something that's helpful or not helpful, please let us know, or what can we do more in those those application questions that we put out ahead of time. And then also about the gap funding, 30 million that we get every year, as we all know, is not enough for the CDBG program. And with the OTC applications, those funds went very, very fast. So unfortunately, we had to close the application sooner than what we expected. So having for you guys to kind of get out of the comfort zone of just using only CDBG, we want you to kind of look at grants.gov to see what other grants are available, that can help you get more funds for your community, because we know that 30 million is not enough. We are fighting the good fight to see if we can get more funds, but as you know, with everything changing this year with the new folks in office, we just don't know what to expect with our funding for federal. So we want to be able to kind of get you guys in that comfort zone to kind of think, look outside of CDBG for additional funds.
Thank you, everyone. Jay Padilla has a comment. For legislative information, wouldn't it be better if that was part of the main application instead of the each activity or the sub application?
I'm gonna take a stab at this, Tanner. Thank you very much for your feedback. So with the legislative form, 99% of the time, yes, you are correct. However, jurisdictions sometimes will submit applications, or will submit multiple applications that cover multiple different, depending on the project or program, will be associated with a different legislative member. So unfortunately, that does have to remain with the sub app at this time, unless we can find a better way, unless we can find another clever way to work around with it. But thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you, Jeannie. Lisa McCandless, is there a May deadline for some portion type of the application? There's not a May deadline for the application. You may be referring to in the 2024 NOFA. We expect our competitive applications that we expect that month for the contract executions to occur. Jennifer Dart, is there any idea of what combination of activities will be allowed in the 2024 24-25 NOFA? We would like to share with our council that what constraints they have as the mix of eligible activities. Do we know when the NOFA will be released or an estimate of when it will be due?
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for your questions. Unfortunately, we do not have any information on the 2025 NOFA at this moment. As soon as we have more information, we will definitely share it with everybody via office hours.
Thank you, Jeannie. Brandy comments, planning grants related to another activity, poison pill. The latest HCD revelation that engineering, design, cost, and NEPA cannot be conducted as a standalone planning activity, which we assume HCD has received guidance from HUD that references 570, 205, etc., and leaves small jurisdictions without funding sources to plan for implementation, many critical infrastructure projects. These project costs cannot be funded through general funds as there are none. Grants do not allow the type of projects that CDBG will, or the jurisdiction is too small to apply for the funding or cannot compete with the large metropolitan areas. Loans are not an option as small jurisdictions cannot bear the loan costs. 2. Small jurisdictions will not gamble on the poison pill of having to repay a grant if they cannot implement the project in 6 years, which further disenfranchises these small cities and towns. And there's the second half. 3. Small infrastructure projects such as replacing sections of water or sewer lines or repaving streets, etc., generally do not need a feasibility study. Performing a feasibility study not only wastes taxpayers' dollars, but it also encourages unnecessary project enlargement and lengthens the time to get these projects complete by 3 to 6 years. 4. Taking into account the above and that 570, 205, etc., engineering design costs and environmental assessment and clearance activities are eligible under 57201 to 570204. One option is to revert back to having engineering and NEPA shovel-ready planning project be allowed as part of construction projects as it was before 2020. Jurisdictions would be open to other options for these types of planning projects that do not further exclude small communities by guaranteeing funding for implementation.
Thank
Susan.
you, Brandy. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'll see what I can do to help. Okay, so on your first comment, really appreciate that feedback. To clarify, NEPA is something that can be done with a planning grant with just the regular 20A normal planning grant that we do. So let's see, how can I tackle these for you? So I really appreciate this feedback, and I know that the project costs can't be funded through general funds. Okay, I get it. This is something that we're trying really hard to address for folks. That was why we came up with our creative way of 20A asterisks for those planning grants that are tied to a discussion or to a project, excuse me. So I would think if you want, Brandy, if you wouldn't mind sending an email to the inbox, I think that we should maybe have a call with you to talk about some of this, but in the spirit, because we can get a little more in the weeds with you on it. But in the spirit of time and in the spirit of what you're seem to be demonstrating here. So I get the poison pill reference that you're mentioning. It's very difficult. There is code that does not allow project specific plans and specs in a planning grant, which is why we came up with this other way. So going further down to your question 3 with, let's see, the feasibility study, So a feasibility study is with the 20A, and actually the national objective deliverable for the feasibility study is whatever the results of the feasibility study were. So that is not included. Doing a feasibility study is not included in the 6-year time frame to have the projects completed. But one of the reasons that we do promote and encourage those feasibility studies is because we've had a lot of jurisdictions that have applied for funding for specific projects or programs that actually are not feasible in the community, and it ends up with a full disencumbrance. So it's kind of a waste and sadly that happens a lot. So we're trying to tighten up both issues here by, with the 20A, it is allowed with a normal planning grant, per HUD regulation, we can do feasibility studies and things like that. But when it comes to it, it's literally, there is a code saying, I don't have it on the top of my head, that says plans and specs cannot be, specific to a project. And there's just some really strict parameters. So we tried to come up with a creative way of being able to give those basically pre-development costs to smaller jurisdictions, especially who don't have those funds. And then, but it also must be tied to a national objective matrix code with a project completion. So I do appreciate all of this feedback. We will take everything into consideration as we go forward. We're a little bit hindered by the code's restrictions for planning grants, but it is an evolving process that we're trying to, be creative and get around some of that. So we will definitely keep you posted on it. And if you would like to have kind of a little more in-depth discussion on what you're seeing and going through and what the options are, please feel free to send an email request and we'll hop on a call with you and have a chat. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Susan. Jim Robbins comments, for future CDBG NOFAs starting with 2025, is it anticipated that only housing rehab programs can count as matching funds for CDBE code enforcement programs? Or could housing rehab project funds be counted as matching as well? An example of housing rehab project would be a home or CDBG funded multi-million-dollar rehabilitation of an affordable rental housing complex within the jurisdiction's boundaries. Jeannie.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for your comment. At this moment, we do not have any plans on making any changes to the code enforcement requirements for housing rehab to include projects. But the 2025 NOFA is still in development. And if you do feel strongly about that, please send us an email to the unit inbox for us to discuss this internally with if you could provide more information. But at this time, unfortunately, project funds are not being considered as the match or for the ratio for code enforcement.
Thank you, Jeannie. Brandy Caparasso comments, this suggestion is in relation to Appendix F, CDBG scoring matrix 2024 for competitive applications. There were two specific sections that jurisdictions could gain points that until the NOFA was issued, the jurisdiction was unaware that there would be scoring that could impact the scoring significantly. We were given plenty of warning that submitting quarterly reports on time would affect future funding. One, CDBG as gap funding. This is a significant amount of points to lose for those jurisdictions who do not have matching nor general funds to leverage with CDBG funds. For many small jurisdictions, CDBG is the only way they can provide public services or plan for projects. Two, community engagement. As this section was unknown to affect the point system until the NOFA was issued, it was unknown that there was a large impact on jurisdictions that start the application process far in advance of issuance of NOFA. Many of the suggestions any jurisdiction can perform without added extra cost if the jurisdiction is aware that points will be given for extra effort in advance. Please indicate if this will be in the 2025 NOFA. Provided resources to remove barriers to participation at public meetings, hearings, e.g. childcare, transit fare vouchers, interpreter, and/or, well, it cuts off there. Thank you for your comments, Brandy.
Yeah, really appreciate those comments, Brandy. I like your suggestions here and totally understand your comments on some of this. So we will definitely take that into consideration. The community engagement is a big portion. So we we don't really have any information on what will come out in the 2025 NOFA, but as we determine the scoring parameters, we will keep all of your comments in consideration for that. So sorry, we don't have too much we can share on the 2025. We're not really into that quite yet, but we will, we'll definitely keep you posted as we learn, we will share.
Susan, to piggyback off of your comment regarding the scoring, if anyone does have suggestions on what they feel like should be scored, should not be scored, how to make things more equitable, please, this is absolutely the forum to voice your ideas and concerns and suggestions for us to take into account.
Agree. Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. And Lori, I do see your hand. I'm just trying to get through the questions in the Q&A first. Brandy comments, we appreciate all the extra areas to upload information. You're quite welcome. I think that was based on a comment from last listening session. So we do listen. Brandy comments, is the racial equity section going to be scored? If so, there needs to be a major revisions as small homogeneous jurisdictions will not score well. That section is not scored. Yeah. Brandy comments, is there more direction on what HCD would like on the following section, as we don't know if we completed it correctly for jurisdictions? Please indicate how your application is compliant with California Health and Safety Code 50827 in support of housing, or California Health and Safety Code 50828 in support of economic development. Jeannie?
Hi, Brandy. So for that question, to give the audience a little backstory, is that California Health and Safety Codes state, state that at least 51% of all CDBG funds must support housing, and 30% of all CDBG funds must support economic development. And in the past, and hopefully it's with anyone who has more CDBG knowledge than I do, past CDBG knowledge than I do, we used to meet those goals based on matrix codes, but we have since then realized and understood that it's not necessarily by matrix code and by how the project or program can actually support either economic development or housing. And so in order to meet this legislative requirement, instead of doing it by matrix codes, which would severely hinder us in how many applications we can award and what type of applications we can award, we are asking that jurisdictions explain to us how their project or program can support economic development or housing. I hope that provided some clarity on that. And if anybody wants to jump in, please add to this.
Thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, I would just add that it's really our way of trying to, like Jeannie said, distribute more funds out and still be able to meet our legislative requirements, HCD's legislative requirements of finding those nexuses to housing and economic development. So that's part of why we ask all those questions. So hopefully that gives a little clarity. And thank you, Jeannie. That was a great synopsis.
Thank you both. Jay Padilla comments, I know some of the previous questions were looked at to try and reduce repetitive questions written differently, but some of the new questions added, I believe, in the main application still seemed repetitive. Thank you, Jade. If you have specific questions, please provide those. Anonymous attendee comments, we would like to ask if there could be extra support and assistance for newer agencies that are looking to acquire for the first time. The process and application are overwhelming. Susan.
Yes, thank you, and welcome to CDBG Anonymous. Again, we would love for you to send an email to the unit email inbox, which is in the chat. It's cdbg@hcd.ca.gov, and request for technical assistance. We would need to know what jurisdiction that you're talking about, which NOFA you're thinking about, if it's for 2025 that you want assistance with, and we will assign a representative to get you started and get you going. So that's what we need to do when you want technical assistance, especially for first timers. We will assign someone that can walk you through the process, and hopefully that will help you have a competitive application and have your ducks in a row when it does come time to apply. So thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. Jay Padilla comments, I'm sorry if I missed it, but I don't think there was guidance if the GA environmental review record was needed to be for the full application, GA for all activities included, or for each activity still. So this time around, and for 2023, we requested one GA ERR, or GA, if you don't know, is General Administration. That form would cover all requested general administration funds. Thank you. Lesha Schaefer, we are putting together a program for first-time home buyers coming out of transitional housing. This program includes a case manager that will help individuals become homeowner ready and work on housing stability and retention services. Can this grant be used for staffing and admin costs for case management to provide those services? Alesha, thank you for your question. Please email the CDBG inbox directly, and we can get you some assistance for your question. Jade Padilla comments, there was a section in the activity that was noted to be completed last, but its completion is needed to differentiate when you have multiple activities in your profile. There's a section in the activity.
Sorry, I just
I believe what you're, I believe I know what you're referring to.
I just need to read the comment one more time. Give me 1 minute, sorry. So the section the form that you needed to complete last, so backing up a tad here first is in the application, one form or section, as you're calling it, Jade, does not talk to another form, meaning that your answers, the way you answer a question on one form does not generate any questions or have any bearing on any of the subsequent questions that are being generated in the other forms, which may cause some of the repetitions that you're seeing. I'm not sure. And so that form that needed to be completed last did not have any bearing on what questions would be generating in the other sections that you're completing. I'm hoping that made sense.
Thank you, Jeannie. Lori, I'm going to let you talk now. Question.
Hi, Tanner. Hi, team. So I wanted to go back just to Brandy's comments regarding some of the planning grant, and Susan, your response more is just a clarification and kind of consideration as you guys work to define that based on the reg. As you know, I've been doing this for a long time, so I've been through multiple interpretations of that process and program, especially related to planning grants and engineering costs, and what constitutes plans and specs and what doesn't. So what had historically been in place, which makes it more difficult kind of moving forward because we're kind of getting different information from you than what had been done in the past, is that we were allowed to do plans up to a certain percentage before they were considered engineered drawings, because in order to do some of the work that we need to do to determine feasibility or to complete environmental documents, that portion of the engineering needs to be completed. It's not buildable, so they allowed us to do that and not consider it project-specific plans and specs pursuant to the code. And then one of the questions that came up during the back and forth of the NOFA that really confused me was the comment that we couldn't do cost estimates. So I think that is something that's critical in a planning grant, is that we can do, and they are preliminary cost estimates, but those are critical components to determine whether a project is feasible or not. So I think it's just some confusion occurred as you are working through defining what that means to your program now, based on what we have historically worked through in the past. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you to understand kind of what's happening on our side of the world as we try to implement and make these projects work with the activity definitions that were being provided. That's my dog snoring. Sorry if you hear that.
Thank you, Lori. Now
Okay.
you'll hear my dog snoring. No, yes, no, I really appreciate that feedback. And as you know, we're going through these questions on planning grants, it's becoming clear that we need to be more clear before the 2025 comes out. So we will take note of these comments. I did write down, preliminary cost estimates being something we need to clarify. So we will provide some additional clarity and information, and try to make this a little more solid for the next time around, so it isn't so confusing for folks. So really appreciate that feedback. And if you don't mind putting your suggestions and this comment in general into well, actually it'd probably be better if you send that to the CDBG inbox, then we'll coordinate all the planning grant questions and try to make that a little more clear for next time. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Lori.
Lori. Jade Padilla, you also have your hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Tanner. So I just wanted to clarify the issue or the comment that I made on the section in the activity that says or notes to be completed last. So the reason that was an issue, it's not for the actual rest of the activity information itself. It's just that when you click sub-application, it shows you all of your sub-applications. So if you're not allowed to put I shouldn't say not allowed, but if you don't put the title in first, that is in that section that says to be done last, they all look the same. And if you're working on multiple, it gets confusing to click on one, then no, that's not the right one, click on the other. So that's the only issue I know that I had with that saying to be completed last, was because all the sections look the same. If you don't, all of the activity applications look the same if you don't do that part.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Jade, for your clarification. And that is definitely on us. We should have provided a better TA on that. You're completely right. You won't be able to differentiate until you did complete that first, or not necessarily complete it, but at least input information and save it. So that will be something we take into consideration for the next NOFA. Thank you so much, Jade. Or I'm sorry, the next application.
Thank you, Jade. Thank you, Jeannie. Mirna Garcia, I'm a realtor in Fresno who attempts to help by making more lenders, realtors, and applicants of the option to apply for additional funding. Would be nice to see a cross-reference or checklist of different funding that can be layered. Susan?
Sure, thank you for that. Appreciate that comment and definitely can consider that. If you are looking for, we do have some folks that are commingling CDBG funds with other state agency funds and other options. So if you have something in mind that, for all jurisdictions, if you have something in mind that you think might be able to be, or maybe CDBG doesn't have enough funding to complete a particular project, we can try to coordinate and direct with other possible options for funding and at least give you some places you can do some research for finding funding. It would be difficult for us to make a cross-reference checklist of different fundings because we are not always aware of them. But depending on the circumstance, we can sometimes direct folks to other options like USDA or, OES if it's a mitigation situation. So we do have some options, but and we can certainly direct folks to different agency for inquiries on that as well. So individually, it's something we can do if folks want to send to our unit inbox, hey, we have this project, but CDBG doesn't have enough funding. Do you have any other ideas? Then we can try and direct folks to get other ideas. So do appreciate that feedback. But a checklist or cross-reference for other funding would be a heavy lift because they're always changing. All these programs, CDBG is an annual program, but a lot of other agencies and HCD also has, non-annual funding options that come out here and there. And we try to keep apprised of those so that we can coordinate with others. And we're always looking to do just that very thing. So if you do have a circumstance where you're just not sure, send us an email and we'll see what we can do to assist. Thank you for that feedback there. It also kind of goes with what we've been doing with the gap but for funding. So this is helpful for everyone if we can coordinate these things. We're always happy to do so. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Susan. And just a note, I did have to remove several AI note takers from the participants list. Unfortunately, we aren't able to host AI note takers in our meetings. It's against HCD policy currently. Anonymous attendee, can you provide a sample application in PDF form? I know you can't provide for every breakout type, but 1GA, OTC, and sub. Jeannie.
Unfortunately, that is a system limitation that we are not able to provide a sample application. The best we were able to do was to release the application questions with the NOFA. Thank you.
Randy comments, to follow up on Paul with main versus sub applications, I had to rework the duplication of benefits in the planning sub application budget because the OTC didn't make it on time. I'm assuming that's duplication of benefits. Randy.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Brandy, for that comment. And that is something we're already considering, and I appreciate your feedback on that. Always looking to make this more equitable. And we learned this time around, with how quickly we ran out of OTC funds, that we needed to do some rework. So we will definitely keep everyone apprised of any changes that we do make, but this is something that is on our radar to consider. So appreciate you pointing it out.
Thank you. Janet comments, sometimes the questions arise based on what we see in the actual application module, and we try to respond the best we can and hope we've responded with what you've intended. Thank you for your comment, Janet. Yeah, I think everyone has kind of expressed that today. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, sorry, Tanner. I would just piggyback off of that by saying really encourage folks to reach out during the review period where we can still answer questions. And, we can definitely kind of give you some TA on what we're looking for with specific sections that you're hoping that you've responded the way we were asking. Sometimes it's on us that our clarification isn't 100%. So, we can always take a look at those also, but during that review period before the application opens, if you want to know what we're looking for in any specific section based on the questions we've released, please hit us up. We were, as Jeannie said earlier, very surprised we didn't get a whole lot of questions during that review period. Made us a little nervous. So next time around, I would definitely recommend that you try to get the clarity that you're looking for during that review period before the application opens. So thank you for that comment. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Susan. Jade Padilla comments, in terms of the funding section, there is a question asking if you have all the funds secured. There needs to be a clarification if it is referring to the other sources of funding at the time of application or if funding is awarded. Thank you, Jade. Susan.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say the same thing. Noted. That's a good point of clarification. Can work on.
And Santian comments, I agree with Paul on the assistance limitation. We sometimes don't know what the application is going to ask of us. We can only assume what may be required and feel confused or lost when we are looking at the application as to what to submit. City of Danuba. Thank you, Anna. That goes along with what Jade and Paul have expressed as well. Anonymous attendee comments, just to clarify, the CDBG funding, gap funding, how can you help new developers or emerging? How is the equitable distribution process that no one will be left behind? We don't partner with developers. We partner with local cities and counties that qualify for our funding. Thank you for your comment. Jade Padilla comments, this year, the 2 NOFA webinars were given in the same week and there were no others scheduled. Will they be spread out more for the upcoming NOFA? Susan.
Sure, that's a great suggestion and a good observation and something we can definitely consider doing going forward. But we do have them recorded also for access. So hopefully that's helpful for folks that want to go. Maybe I do recommend that you re-review them as you're doing the application. And noted. Yeah, Jeannie, it looks like you might have something to add.
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy comments, gap funding for small jurisdictions. Many times there isn't funding available outside of CDBG that is available to larger jurisdictions such as gas tax, etc. Noted. Thank you, Brandy. Paul Ashby comments on the sub-application for competitive. Is there a reason why you have marked complete this section tab last when that section actually names the application so you can tell which monopoly card is which? Yeah, Jeannie went over that. Go ahead, Jeannie.
I'll just respond as well. That form was asked to be completed last as if you selected OTC, it would show that funds are exhausted. So if you completed that first before we had closed the competitive, I'm sorry, the OTC applications, you wouldn't have gotten the notification that the OTC funds were exhausted. That's the reason why we did state to do that last, but again, noted for the future, and we will make updates in the 25 application. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jeannie. Jessica Nguyen comments, I'm with a 501c3 in transition to get into affordable housing. To be honest, you have too many programs and I'm confused. Any assistance to that get me into the industry? What is the simple programs grants you currently have and resource to connect with others who have similar mission? Jeannie.
So I believe there are several comments in here regarding assistance for profits, 501(c)(3)s, nonprofits. So CDBG, the state CDBG program we are only for non-entitlement jurisdictions, cities, counties, and towns, or we partner with only non-entitlement jurisdictions. We do not provide direct funding to any nonprofits, for-profits, organizations, or individuals. So if you are looking for assistance, direct assistance, CDBG is not the program this is not the program that you need to apply under. You would need to reach out to your local jurisdictions for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie. I just want to comment, there have been several comments and questions in the chat, webinar chat, which is different than the question and answer feature. We won't be able to go through the webinar chat today, but if you please pop your questions or comments into the question and answer so we can address those. Thank you. Kelly Hansen comments, what is the difference between the now unallowable 20 planning and allowable 20A? Susan.
All right, I'll do my best to answer that, Kelly. The 20 planning has become 20A to distinguish it between the 20A asterisk, and this is the way that we are creatively jumping around in the planning grants to try to get folks some pre-development costs and still adhere to the codes that we are required to adhere to. So the 20 planning grant is now 20A. The 20A asterisk is now a creative way to be able to help folks who don't have internal funds maybe to do, plans and specs and things like that. It just has to be tied to a matrix code. So if you want to email the unit inbox, we can give you a little more comprehensive on any specific plans that you have going forward for maybe 2025. And as we've stated several times, we're going to provide more clarity on planning grants for the next NOFA that comes out for sure. So hopefully we can get everybody on the same page of what's going on there. So appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Lacey Salas comments, I would appreciate hearing the conversation, or at least the outcome of the conversation with Brandy regarding the poison pill comment. And I think that there are likely other folks from small jurisdictions who would be interested as well. Perhaps you include an update at the next office hours. Did you touch on whether you might consider what she mentioned in number 4, adding plans and specs back to part of an award that also includes construction? Jeannie.
As we have more information, we will release it to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Angel Johnstone comments, in the upcoming NOFA, can we now apply for housing and ED programs at the same time? This was not allowed in the last NOFA application. Susan. Oh, Susan, you're muted.
Well, that explains why I couldn't hear myself. Okay. Thank you, Tanner. So yes, thank you for that feedback. We really appreciate it. We'll see. We don't have anything to share yet for the 2025, but we are collecting all these comments to see what we can do for the 2025. So we just really appreciate that suggestion.
Thank you. Jade Padilla comment suggestion. This was touched on a little earlier. In the past, there was a cost category table that showed which allocation, activity, AD, and GA eligible expenses could be applied to. It may be good to reissue this, Jeannie.
I'm unfamiliar with this cost category table, but what we do ask in our current applications and NOFA is to allocate your funds to activity and GA. We do ask that you do not detail out line by line what it's going to in the e-civis budget, as that ties your hand if you need to move funds around later. So keeping it general to just activity versus GA is what we ask.
Susan did, oh, sorry, excuse me. Angel Johnstone comments, are all jurisdictions who submitted an application going to be funded? And when will the jurisdictions receive further direction to move forward to execution of a standard agreement? Susan.
Sure. Thank you, Angel, for that question. It would be unlikely that all jurisdictions who submitted an application are going to be funded. We have very limited funds and we were oversubscribed. So, that's the scoring and other factors. So that one I can answer that likely not all will be funded. We always are doing our best to make sure we fund as many as we can, of course. And when will the jurisdictions receive further direction for a standard agreement? That will be upcoming. We've previously mentioned our anticipation is to have some updates for you by May and get those standards agreements going. But of course, moving pieces, not sure, we don't have a solid date on that. But folks will receive information as quickly as possible. We want to get those out before we start out the new 2025. So to be continued and hopefully soon is the short answer. But thank you for that request.
Thank you. Paul Ashby comments, regarding capacity and knowledge, can HCD consider allowing draft subrecipient agreements as full points? Many organizations and jurisdictions won't execute agreements when funding is not in place, especially when we tell them an award is most likely 6 to 9 months away. Jeannie.
Thank you for your comment, Paul. We will take this into consideration as we are drafting the 25 NOFA.
Jennifer Dart comments, hopefully there will be another meeting about 2025 NOFA. We didn't apply for 2024, but we anticipate applying for 2025 when and if it comes out. Thank you. We'll trust it will come out, but we will be discussing the 2025 NOFA as sooner we get to it. Thank you, Jennifer. Brandy comments continue for section F, presumably from your previous comment. These are the items that you had an issue with, I believe, provided resource to remove barriers to participation at public meetings and hearings, solicit community feedback through additional methods of engagement other than speaking at a public meeting. Thank you for your comment, Brandy. Jay Padilla comments, if the racial equity section is not scored, how is it looked at? Do jurisdictions get dinged, or are there any other consequences if the reviewer doesn't feel that the responses are adequate? I can take this. Jade, so it's not scored and we don't ding based on your responses in the racial equity section. We ask that it be completed, and that is the minimum requirement. But there's no negative consequences of what the responses are. Kelly Hansen comments, our country has restrictions on use of funds for public meetings, inability to provide food, stipends to participants, etc. This is direct conflict with what is encouraged for CDBG public meetings. It is difficult to provide these suggested items when we are hamstrung by internal policies on use of funds. Kelly, thank you for your comment. We do realize that those are ineligible costs under our program. Jay Padilla comments, could quality of life be included as part of the support of economic development and housing? Jeannie.
Jade, for activity-specific questions, please either email the unit inbox or your CDBG representative. Thank you.
Jeannie, I think she's referring to the application regarding the nexus.
The nexus for, if it's the nexus for a specific application, your rep can help you work with you on.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jeannie. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Priscilla Wilson comments regarding capacity. Would HCD consider extending the period of time to count towards experience for housing rehab? For example, full points for less than 5 to 10 years, partial points for 10 plus years. Jeannie.
Thank you so much for your comment. This is great information and things for us to consider for our 25 scoring.
Priscilla also comments, agree with Brandy on funding availability for small jurisdictions outside of CDBG that is available for gap funding.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Definitely want to have you send emails to the unit inbox or to your rep if you already have a representative for CDBG to look at possible options outside of your own jurisdictions that could help with the gap funding. There's often other programs and we are happy to and encourage partnership with other agencies and programs that might be able to cover that. We can't always, of course, but we can do our best to try to help you for other gap funding that is outside of your jurisdiction. If you send an email to our unit inbox, we'll see what we can do to help you, or to your representative if you already have one.
Thanks, Susan. Brandy, comment following up on the state requirements for HR and ED, would responses be eliminated, or responses section be eliminated, discounted if HCD feels that the project doesn't support HR and or ED and therefore eliminate the application? Susan.
Yeah, that would not disqualify you eliminating the application, but it really helps us with our ability to meet our regulation with that nexus to meet what the code requires of HCD for the funding distribution. So it is very helpful, but you would not be eliminated necessarily. But if there is a nexus we could find, we would want to do that. So that would be something you would want to either email the unit inbox about for a specific situation, or a rep if you already have one. I know you handle a lot of grantees, so depends on the situation, but it's not necessarily going to eliminate the application, but it does help us be able to distribute a little more fairly. So and also meet our requirements. So do recommend that you hit us up with specifics if that's your situation.
Thank you much. Lacey Salas comments, to add to Jade's comment regarding the NOFA webinars, please do schedule them with a little more distance, both from each other and from the NOFA drop. It would be helpful if we had time to review the NOFA and the sample NOFA questions prior to the NOFA webinar so that we can be prepared with relevant questions to take advantage of the opportunity and to ask questions in the group setting.
I'll take that, Tanner. Thank you, Lacey. We will definitely take this into consideration when we're setting the calendar for the 2025 NOFA and the ensuing webinars.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks, Jade. Or Lacey, excuse me. Paul Ashby comments, is there a way in eCivis to name your budgets if you have multiple, or can we try to do that in 2025? Jeannie?
Unfortunately, Paul, there is not a way to name your budget, and it's not something we can do for 2025. This is just a system limitation.
Lori Adams comments, if you can provide a list of other funding sources that were included in the awarded projects, that would be a great resource. Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. That's really good comment, something we can consider doing once we get going with this go around. Again, the other programs that we do funding with are not always annual programs. So sometimes it's a one-off for, you know, someone experiencing something that maybe FEMA's doing one time around or USDA does one time around. So it's not necessarily super helpful, but comment noted. And I think that might be something we can discuss maybe at an office hours and let folks know some of the other entities that we've been partnering with. So it's a really good suggestion. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anonymous attendee comments, can we find this recording on the website?
Hi, yes, all office hour webinars and slides will be found on our CDBG website. It usually does take us about 2 weeks to a month and a half to get this, or a month to a month and a half to get this up onto our website.
And that's due to remediation for ADA accessibility.
Sorry, correct. Yes. The slides take a little longer, but the office hour recording is up on our YouTube page usually faster.
Thank you. Brandy comments, this may not be wanted from other jurisdictions, but would reducing the budget cap for housing rehab and economic development allow for allowing more OTC projects? Susan.
Thank you, Brandy. That's something we can certainly consider. And again, we have to meet our, you know, economic development numbers and what we're required by the legislature. So that's part of why we put the cap on, because we look at the overall funding and determine as best we can what the caps should be in order for us to meet our regulations. But we will definitely consider how that goes around with this 2024 go around and see what we can do. So appreciate that feedback.
Thank you. Lacey Salas comments, I know it's hard to capture everything that will be needed for each type of application in the sample questions, but if those can be as accurate as possible when they are released concurrently with the NOFA drop, it might help us to determine what questions we have during the review period. Thank you, Lacey. Noted. Paul comments, sorry not to beat a dead horse, but you keep saying how surprised you all were that you didn't get more questions in your allowed time frame. I think you could see that folks need to actually be in the portals to ask their questions. I know we have prompts, but that is a huge difference than the actual application that include the drop-down answers and actually going through it in detail with the jurisdictions and subrecipients. Susan.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, it is beating a dead horse, but we get the message. And we actually, you know, we've been chatting on the side of how we can possibly do something different, you know, maybe a walkthrough or something we can do. There are time limitations and system limitations to that, but absolutely going to be looking at a way that we can possibly do just what you're suggesting here. So more to come on that. We'll keep you posted on what we can come up with. Appreciate the comment very much.
Thank you. Brandy comments, so if a jurisdiction completed the complete this last first and submitted it, then they were told that the OTC funding was exhausted when it may not have been? No. No, because that section was only added after the OTC funding was actually exhausted. Correct me if I'm wrong, team.
No, that's true. You got that right.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Susan. Paul Ashby comments, I think the majority of questions and answers that are being asked are not giving anyone a technical advantage. Thank you, Paul, for your feedback. Anonymous attendee comments, hi, can you review past applications received by participants under a Freedom of Information Act so you know how to, or is it best to request office hours? Susan?
Okay. That's kind of a loaded question. To review, there's a lot of personal identifying information can be in the application. So um, it's probably best to talk about your questions during office hours. We can't really super share that. There is, of course, Freedom of Information Act, and there's also Public Record Act requests. So if you wanted to, go through that process to look at any of that information, you could certainly go to the HCD website and request it. But it would have to, go through the process of redaction for personal identifying information and that sort of a thing. So, but certainly that is well within the purview of citizens to request that information. But I don't think it would be probably not super ethical to do a full handing out of past applications received. So it's a little bit loaded question, but certainly something that you could request in a formal process.
Thank you. Brandy comments, do you know when the 2025 resolution will be released? Most jurisdictions that I work with need these far in advance, as they only hold city council meetings one time a month, and board of supervisors takes 4 weeks to get on their agenda.
Hi, Brand.
Jeannie.
We do not have a date yet. Usually the resolution is released with the NOFA. We will look into being able to release it sooner. But we will keep you posted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was actually the last question that was in the queue. I'm going to review if we have any, since we have time, in the chat. Myrna comments, there's many nonprofits or for-profit who would be great at distributing CDBG funds if there is training available for this organizations to apply. Thank you, Myrna, for your comment.
Myrna, I would suggest that you connect or have these nonprofits connect with the jurisdictions to whether it be the city or the city, town or county to work together to apply for a application.
Tanisha comments, will small and emerging organizations be considered if this is their first time being funded? So we fund local or government, cities, towns, counties that are non-entitlement. But in the scoring matrix, we did provide points if a jurisdiction had not come in for CDBG funding for some time. And Janae Rothschild comments, it would be helpful for smaller jurisdictions if HCD provided all the legal documents for administrating these funds, i.e. deed of trust, regulatory agreements, development agreements, etc. Thank you, Anjane.
Jana,
All
we
right,
have a couple Q&As.
thanks. I was just about to get that. Let's see. Lacey comments, I get why the OTC apps were first come, first served, but I think you may be on the right track by considering other ways to equitably award those funds. Trying to race to submit OTC on the first day to hopefully get funding isn't conducive to best quality applications. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but perhaps a future listening session, once you have your ideas assessed out, could be beneficial. Susan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lacey. Yes, we agree with everything you said there, and really appreciate your suggestion of a future listening session on that. definitely that is something we want to avoid going forward. This year, with how quickly we exhausted funds, really was illuminating and how difficult that process is. In the past, it's generally been spread out through several days, but it just went really fast this time. So it's kind of highlighted some of the issues with this equitable distribution that we've been talking about. So that is definitely on the radar, and we are definitely working at resolving, doing something a little bit differently for 2025. We'll absolutely keep everybody posted once we get our ideas sussed out for sure. So thank you for that suggestion. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Susan. And that kind of goes on to answer this next comment. CDBG, LACTA, HCD are handled by NOFA underwriting. All these passed application and was not awarded due to point system. How can we beat the odds specifically for an emerging or new applicant? The seminar is helpful, however, the complexity of the applications, most are not knowledgeable to jurisdiction and legislator without guidance, frustration for a newcomer. Jeannie?
If you are a new applicant, we really strongly recommend that you reach out to the CDBG inbox and we will assign you a representative. As long as it is not during the application open period, we will work with you as closely as we possibly can to ensure that you are comfortable with the application process and the expectations. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy comments. Can a jurisdiction determine if they have completed their reports on time? eCivis gives weird dates, and therefore we cannot determine if the jurisdiction gets points. Susan?
Sure. Thank you, Brandy. Very good question. That can be easily determined by reaching out to your assigned representative. We do track these reports and their on-time completions. It's part of our requirements as well for us internally to keep track of for risk assessment, monitoring, that sort of a thing. So if you do want to know, just have the jurisdiction reach out to their program rep, and the program rep can let you know if you have any outstanding or late reports that have come in. So appreciate that, and hopefully that's helpful to everyone.
Thanks, Susan.
I will add to that if you look at the award dashboard, there should be the date submitted and the date created associated with each report.
Thanks, Jeannie. Jade comments, can a mechanism be put into place to print or somehow save the application that was submitted? Jeannie.
Unfortunately, there is not a way to print the application or save the application onto your computer.
I would just piggyback off of that. As most of you know, HCD is working on a new system. We hope to come out, I don't know, within the next, as quickly as we can. So hopefully that is something we might be able to do going forward in the future. Likely not for 2025, maybe. I don't know. We're still trying to work on that as quickly as possible, but do appreciate that feedback so we can try to work that in as we move forward as a department in whole.
Thank you. Brandy comments, date submitted in reports is not the actual date submitted in eCivis from my experience. Jeannie.
For the comment, Brandy, that might be something a glitch with eService. It should be the actual date that you submitted and created the report, but we will look into it.
Thank you much. Lacey comments, I'm sure you are already thinking of this, but hopefully we can know the status of our 24 applications well in advance of the 25 NOFA. As Brandy stated, we need to get started with public notices, public hearings, and project program application development prior to the NOFA release to ensure that we have enough time to complete the process, and whether or not we were funded from 2024 will affect what we are eligible to apply for in 2025. So our whole design process would be, excuse me, contingent on this knowledge. Susan?
Yes, absolutely, Lacey. And as you mentioned, yes, we are absolutely thinking about that always. And we, internally with our capacity, we don't want to overlap the 2024 with the 2025 either. So definitely long before the 2025 NOFA comes out, um, jurisdictions will get some kind of indication on whether or not they've or if they've been awarded and what corrections might be needed. So we're moving as quickly as we can to get that information out to folks as well. So definitely noted and appreciate that comment, and we are aware of that as well. So we will push as hard as we can to get the 2024 notices out so that you can anticipate what you'll need for 2025. So very good comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Brandy comments, not a big point getter, but what if the jurisdiction does not have state property to allocate?
Can you please clarify what you mean by state property?
It's the excess sites, I believe, Jeannie.
Oh, for the plan for planning grants, Brandy?
Yeah, I'm assuming.
Does not. The state excess sites, that was something requested by our Housing and Policy Department. To so unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't. I actually don't have a good answer
I
for
know,
you.
Jeannie, we're
I believe
dancing around it.
I believe the way it's written is like if you have state excess sites involved in your application, then you get 5 points. If you don't, then you
Right.
don't get any. So that's the way it will likely be scored.
Yeah, and I'm
I-
pretty sure that direction comes right from the governor.
I was pretty sure that the scoring was that if the plans were for development on said excess site, not necessarily that if they had excess sites in the jurisdiction.
Yes, yeah.
That's why it's a little hard for me to answer this one.
Well, thank you all. Brandy, please let us know if you have further questions on that. Lacey comments, I have seen the same thing as Brandy with the dates in e-service. We'll definitely look into that. So thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, and also again, just to reiterate, if you reach out to your program representative, they can, or if you don't have one anymore and you're checking on that, you can go to the unit inbox. But we can definitely give you a play-by-play on the dates that we're looking at on our end.
Thank you much. Jade comments, I agree with Lacey, especially if we were not awarded, we can reapply for the same activities. Thank you, Jade, for your comment. Jay Padilla comments, is PI reporting annual or are we still doing semi-annual? This process has changed a lot. Jeannie?
PI needs to be reported as receipted, Jade. Thank you.
I would refer to our grants management manual for our PI policy. Brandy puts the text from our scoring matrix. State-owned excess sites planning apps only. Planning applications related to sites identified under Executive Order N0619 to create affordable housing on excess state-owned property. So if a planning application is for the planning of a project on a state
State-owned
owned excess state-owned property, then you would receive points. Otherwise, you would not.
So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to award points if you don't have those sites.
That was the last question again. I'll give it just a couple more moments for additional questions or comments. Jade comments, wouldn't that be discriminatory to other areas that need the assistance regarding excess sites? I'm assuming. Jade, thanks for your comment. Okay, that is all. Thank you everyone for attending this listening session and being around for nearly 2 hours. We appreciate your time and your feedback. And I hope everyone has a great, fantastic couple of weeks, and we'll see you again next office hours.
I just want to add real quick, Tanner, before you close the meeting, if you do, just because if you didn't voice your concerns or needs and suggestions in this office hours, please email the unit inbox. We are still open to suggestions, and we'll do as much as we can for the 25 NOFA to incorporate what we can. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.